Warning, the following program has been rated T for truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Oh, we think you can. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells. I'm glad you joined me. We have a lot to talk about. In fact, I was just reading an article about this whistleblower, which with DHS, Department of Homeland Security, his name is Philip Haney, a former Homeland Security Department official during the Obama administration who blew the whistle on his own agency, was found dead with a gunshot about 40 miles east of Sacramento. Well, you know, it's understandable. Who knows what happened? We don't know. This is a developing story, but it's interesting to know. He had, I'm reading that we testified before Congress about documents. Let me see. Where's that quote? I'm going to try to find the quote again. Hold on one second. Mr. Haney's testimony that the Department of Homeland Security ordered over 800 documents to be deleted or altered. That was his testimony before Congress. The issue is this. Today I'm titling the show, Democrats, lying. What did I say? It's triple L. Liars, leeches. Losers, liars, and leeches. Yeah, triple L. Or it could be triple F, fools, frauds, and F-ups. It's gonna be triple L or triple F. But I think I'll do triple L. Losers, liars, and leeches. The reason why I call them losers, why? Because they don't put things in proper context. Context is important. I stress this often on this show. You have to have a background, a foundation, or a background of information. You have to have to assess things properly, to assess things accurately. You have to have a background of information. You have to have context. You have to put things in proper context. What Democrats do is they analyze or assess everything in isolation, in a vacuum. They don't view it in its proper context. They don't view it in relation to other things. For instance, we know that historically, traditionally, statistically, presidents serve a second term unless there's something drastic, something major. I think it's 10. There have been 10 presidents who have not served a second term. 11 if you want to count Ford. Ford wasn't actually, is it Ford? Yeah. Ford, no, Johnson. 11 if you want to count Johnson. Johnson wasn't actually elected. He succeeded Kennedy after he was assassinated. But the 3 or 4 in our lifetime, or my lifetime rather, were George H.W. Bush, 1 term, Jimmy Carter, 1 term. Wait, I wrote it down somewhere. Who else? Not in my lifetime. I know John Quincy Adams and John Adams, but there have only been 10. 11 if you count Johnson. So historically, statistically, we know that it's more likely than not that Trump will serve a second term. Right? Just given that, Jimmy Carter, Hubert Hoover, William Taft, Gerald Ford, Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland, Martin Van Buren, John Quincy Adams, and John Adams. These are the 10 presidents have served only 1 term. So historically, statistically, traditionally, Trump will serve a second term. Yet, what do we hear? They don't want him to serve a second term, obviously, the Democrats. So this morning, Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday was talking about the fact that it has been leaked and written up in the Washington Post and the New York Times that the Russians are going to interfere in the 2020 election. They've already started. That's what Chris Wallace was talking about this morning when he had the guy who is what is he? He works with Pence, Chief of Staff for Pence. Mark Short is his name. Yeah, he was drilling him. He was grilling Mark Short this morning on Fox News Sunday about the fact that it has been leaked by Adam Schiff, because they were briefed about a month ago by Shelby Pearson, who is the election security czar, that the Russians are going to interfere in the 2020 election, or they're already meddling, interfering in the 2020 election. Well, how do you define interfere? How do you define meddling? What specifically do you mean by that? We also know with the Mueller report that there was no Russia, despite all the research, all the money spent, all the witnesses investigated, all the documents reviewed, there was no Russian collusion or conspiracy by the Trump campaign with the Russians. That's what came out. That's the main thing that came out of the Mueller report. That is the main thing. Despite that being the main thing, Democrats still talk about Trump rolling with Putin. In fact, they had on Washington Journal Friday or Saturday, the question was, now that we know that the intelligence agencies have reported that the Russians are going to interfere in the 2020 election, what are your thoughts, or something like that? Do you believe it, or something like that? So naturally what? As I said last week, Democrats called in and say, oh, yeah, I know they're going to interfere in the election. Oh, the election is not going to be legit, so on and so forth. In fact, Jane Harman, who was a congresswoman from California, she's now with the Wilson Center, but she was on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace, and she said, this is what she said specifically. Explicitly. She said, well, the 2020 election is not going to be fair. You see how they're sort of, we know where they're headed, right? We know where they're headed. Despite the fact that for 3 years, 4 years, 3.5 years, they've been talking about Russian interference with the United States election. But we don't mind that they're illegal aliens possibly voting, right? So anyway, that was the main narrative. That was the main thing being pushed Friday, Saturday, and this morning, Sunday. So then what do? We come to Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, and they've already debunked that. They've already debunked. You see how and I blame the media. The media is really the culprit. They've already debunked it by Sunday afternoon. They said that that this Shelby Pearson, who is the election security czar, overstated, that it was taken out of context. And this is what Martin Short was trying to tell Chris Wallace, Chris Wallace was emphatic. He kept pushing and pushing and pushing that, that, are you sure? And this Martin Short guy, who is the chief of staff for Pence, said there was no Russian. President Trump did not receive a briefing from the intelligence agencies that the Russian had interfered, are going to interfere that are already starting to interfere are meddling in the 2020 election. This is, as Trump said during his campaign, when he was campaigning, he was giving a speech, right? I think in Nevada, if I'm not mistaken. He said, this is disinformation. This is disinformation, propaganda. It's not true. And yet, so they've already backed up. They've already backtracked. She overstated. And yet Schiff leaked that as if it were true. And the New York Times and Washington Post reported that as if it were definitive, as if it was 100% certain. And folks, Democrats calling into Washington Journal said emphatically, oh, I know that Russian will interfere, and we know that the 2020 election is not going to be fair, that the Russians prefer. They even went to the extent that to say that they prefer Trump, and also they're helping for Bernie to win. These are lies. Okay, this is disinformation. This is not true. And when they retract things, and when they retract statements that they've pushed for days, narrative that they've pushed for days, many people miss it. They miss the retraction. And they're still believing. And this is why despite the Mueller report and what he said and how he blew it, Mueller was a loser testifying before Congress. Despite how he blew it, many people think Trump is still rolling with Putin. This is ridiculous. So that's that. They're losers because they're liars about the disinformation about Russian interfering in the election. They're losers because people don't realize that there's no way that Sanders will beat Trump. The American people are not going to go for socialism. The American people are not going to go for free in-state college tuition, free daycare for every parent, free Medicare for all. The American people are not going to go for it. The majority of the American people, the average person that supports Trump is a youngster, not for nothing, right? They're young folks. Older adults with experience become wiser. Experience gives you wisdom. You've seen this before. You've been down this road before. And also, you've done your homework. You know the history of socialism in the world. You've seen how it's operated. You've done your research. But young folks don't do that. They don't do the research, and they don't have the experience. Sanders has admitted that he's a Democrat socialist, but he's not even a Democrat socialist. I think he's a communist. I believe that because I saw a clip where he was saying, well, it's okay for the American people. It's better to wait in food lines, than it is for the elites to have all the food. This was a video. This was something I heard him say that right out of his mouth. This was something he said back, 20, 30 years ago when he was younger. So it's clear that, Sanders feels that the American system, or rather capitalism, is a bad thing. And I would love for Sanders to get the nomination because the American people need an honest and fair, honest evaluation or an honest critique of capitalism versus socialism. We need to dig into that and get into it and have a better understanding. Because young folks, their impression of it, they get from, I guess, they like the idea of things being free, I guess. I don't know. But they feel like they're more, when you're young, you're sort of more not emphatic, you're more empathetic, and you're more like, yeah, everybody should be getting a fair shake and everybody should be getting but human nature doesn't work that way. I think I heard Sanders say something to the effect that I look out for my neighbor and my neighbor looks out for me. But human nature doesn't work that way. People, they're like subsets. People are primarily interested in themselves and their family. That's their immediate interest, is their family. First themselves, self-interest, and then their family and their loved ones. Next is, their neighborhood, their neighbors, yes. That's next, their neighbors, then their community, then their group, their tribe. And, you get to America. People are interested in being Americans when you go outwards with it. But your primary interest is yourself and your family. You're not going to be willing. Most people, this is human nature. The average person is not willing to give up their bread for someone else to have that. They want to eat first. That's just human nature. They want to survive. When you're on the plane, they tell you, put the mask, the oxygen mask, over yourself first, so you're there for your kid, so you're there for the infant, right? So people, you have to survive first before you can help someone else. But Sanders, young folks think, oh no, I want to help someone else. I want to first before I help myself. I want to give something to someone else before I help myself. I can struggle and suffer before my neighbor. It's okay if I'm struggling and suffering, long as I help my neighbor. So Sanders said, we back in the day, I guess when he was young, he said, it's okay to have bread lines and gas lines and these kinds of things. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's better than elites having all of it. So that's why Democrats are losers, because they're for Sanders, the radical left. But then there are other Democrats who are more centrist, right? They're in the center. They realize how untenable Sanders' position is. $15 an hour minimum wage. I think Tom Steyer is up to $22 an hour. Federal minimum wage, $22 an hour. Sanders wants $15 an hour minimum wage, federal minimum wage. Free child care. I said that. Free state university and colleges tuition. Oh, the main thing, though, is what? The Green New Plan. I said Medicare for all. So let's see. You're going to have the Green New Plan. You're going to have Medicare for all. You're going to have free child care. You're going to have free schooling. Who's going to pay for this stuff? Who's going to pay for it? He admitted, Sanders, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. You know how you have to balance your checkbook? Sanders mentioned something that jobs will be lost with the new Green Plan. Also, there will be requirements for the new Green Plan. It's just fantasy land. It's just fantasy land. Reality bites, and the devil is always in the details. Sanders doesn't go over any details. He has these broad, sweeping notions that young folks find desirable, that young folks find they like it. It's like being in a candy store. Oh, I get this, that, and the other. Wow. It's going to be utopia for America if Sanders is the president. Will be in utopia. They're not considering the fact that none of this stuff would get passed. Okay, none of this stuff will pass Congress. And Sanders would end up being a president who is frustrated and stewing in his own mess. He'd be frustrated. It's never going to pass Congress, House or Senate. None of these things. Why? Because the American people assume that this is the hypothetical. Assuming Sanders becomes the president, there still will be some Republicans in the House and in the Senate, right? But that's a hypothetical because we know it's not going to happen. We want Trump to go up against Sanders. We want that to happen because we want a legitimate and an honest discussion, debate, and intellectual debate about the virtues and values of capitalism versus socialism. We want that debate. And it's about time. This will be educating young folks because they're not getting it in the universities. They're not being informed in the universities as to the merits of capitalism. and as to the cons of socialism. In the last century, I think China killed, communism killed more than 100 million people. It would be a revamping of our entire system. It would be a turning it topsy-turvy, the entire American economy. It's not going to work. But you got to hand it to Sanders. He's energetic, yes, for an old guy. He has the energy. He has the energy like Trump. I'll give him that. And he's consistent. He's not backing down. So now the issue is, is the Democratic establishment going to, because I'm talking about this because Sanders won what? Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. And yet, I think Buttigieg is questioning whether or not the Nevada numbers were accurate. He's questioning that. Anyway, there's my music. I'm playing Dreamers because the Democrat Party is a party of dreamers. Or at least I should say Sanders supporters are dreamers. They're in fantasy land. So I'll be right back. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm your host, Kathleen.
Kathleen Wells, the host of the Naked Truth Report, wants to hear from you. Just like our borders, the phone lines, well, they're wide open. Call in at 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. 866-870-KRLA.
Welcome back to the Kathleen. Oh, I said the Kathleen Wells Show. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. Welcome back to the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and we're going to talk about the fact that, you know what? I just saw this meme on my Facebook page. The ideology that killed over 100 million last century is now being praised at our universities today. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, wouldn't you say? And that's why I think it's a good idea to have Sanders win the nomination, because that will provide us with an opportunity to have an honest debate about the differences between communism /socialism and capitalism. Those two different economic ideologies, with what is best for the American people and why. Don't you think that's a good thing? I think it's a good thing. The other thing I wanted to discuss is, I wanted to mention to my listeners that I happened to run into Congresswoman Diane Watson, who used to represent the area I live in. Her seat is now taken by Karen Bass. Karen Bass is my representative. But Congresswoman Diane Watson, she was a congresswoman for decades, probably. And actually, I had interviewed her back in the day. I don't remember the date, but you can see that interview on the Huffington Post. But anyway, I ran into Congresswoman Diane Watson at CVS. I said, hi, Congresswoman. Hi, Congresswoman Watson. Do you remember me? She said, your face looks familiar. I said, and I said, how did I put it? I said, I really, I just can't support the Democrats anymore. They've just totally destroyed Black America. I just can't support them. And she said, well, who are you supporting? I said, well, Trump. That's when she got literally upset with me. She said, I cannot believe a woman of your stature would be supporting that racist and that bigot. This is a congresswoman. She said, I cannot believe a woman of your stature would be supporting that racist and a bigot. I said, well, that depends on how you define racism. How do you define racism? I don't think he's a racist. I said, the Democratic Party, I said this to her, the Democratic Party has put illegal aliens over American citizens. She said, who do you think is going to pick your fruit? I said, well, they do. I said, I have a radio show now, and illegal aliens I had the building inspector on my show, and illegal aliens in Los Angeles do 80 to 90% of the construction work. She said, well, what has Trump done for you? What has he done for me? What has he done for you? That's what she said. I said, the issue isn't what Trump has done for me. The issue is that Democrats have failed Black America. That's the issue. Why do you keep focusing on Trump? She was actually pointing her finger at me. I can't believe we were in CVS standing talking. She was pointing her finger at me. I guess she thought I would be intimidated. And she just kept saying, she says, what had Trump done for, it's what the Democrats have done. They have destroyed. I cannot be for a party that has destroyed Black America. It's not what Trump has done, it's what the Democrats have done or have not done is the issue. And then she talked about, well, I have a record for 30 years, blah, 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 blah. It was an interesting conversation. But she kept wanting to walk. I said, don't walk away. Don't walk away. You should be willing to listen to I told her, I said, many Black folks are walking away from the Democratic Party. You don't know that? She was just upset. She was either she is, I feel like she was defending her life. She's defending her career as a Democrat congresswoman for 30 years. She has to defend that. How else can she live with herself, right? She has to defend it. And this is what I think all Democrat politicians do. They must defend their life, their career. They will never back down. How can they admit that their whole life, their whole career has been a lie, has been misplaced, has been wrong-headed? How can they admit this? That's why they're so defensive. I think Clyburn said something I heard this recently, last week. He said something to the effect that unemployment was low during slavery for Black Americans. Like someone was saying to him that, Trump has the unemployment rate for Black Americans since Trump has been in office has been the lowest it's ever been. Clyburn said, unemployment was low during slavery. See, I guess this is why they call it, what is that? What is that? This is why they call it Trump derangement syndrome. These people will reach at anything. They're reaching because they must justify their careers. They must justify their life. Otherwise, their whole life has been, and I've said this before. I think I tweeted this to Michael Eric Dyson, and he blocked me. I said, your whole life, your whole career has been a lie, has been a failure. They've made a living off of lying and deceiving the American people. And so they have to justify that. And that's why they're defensive. Anyway, let's see. I have a call. Do I want to take a call? Oh, you want to talk about the difference between socialism and communism, Carlos? Hi, Carlos. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Oh, yes. Good evening. Well, great topic you're on. And it's, I've done a little bit of research on this whole socialism, communism. Basically, really, they're almost the same. Socialism's agenda is to gradually have the government take over all functions of transportation, control of production, everything. And the communists have the same goal, but they want to do by violent means, not gradually. See, that's the difference between socialists and communists. But the final agenda is complete control over people, complete control. But listen, this latent brand of socialists and communists, Democrats that we have, are very dangerous, and they're such hypocritical. They make a big fuss over the Russians interfering with our elections.
Right.
And what did we do in 1954 when the CIA ousted Joseph Arbenz from Guatemala? They did the same thing the CIA again also created regime change in Brazil under João Avelar in 1968. They murdered Patrice Lumumba in the Congo when they didn't like his regime, and then in the 1960s, and in the last 10 years, the CIA, with involvement from Hillary Clinton and John McCain, Alcide Zelaya from Honduras. So what do we call that? That is total regime change. That's far worse than meddling in their elections. That is just taking over and changing the brand of government that's favorable to whatever to our government. So there's such hypocrisy out there, and you're right. Young people have to do their homework and really do some historical analysis of what really socialism and communism really means. Is it a revolution of the proletariat? That's a bunch of garbage. That's a ruse. Really, I mean, Karl Marx says, it's a revolution for the proletariat, for the poor. Yet he was being financed underneath the table by very rich people. His whole entourage, Karl Marx's whole entourage, was made up of industrialists and rich people. You know, the hypocrisy that abounds out there is horrible, and young people, of course, are very gullible. They have to do their homework.
Right.
Then, you know, the revolution of the proletariat is nothing but a bunch of nonsense. It's nothing but a ruse to enable an elitist element to take over government under the guise of the proletariat and a communist government.
Yeah, you know, I guess there's something romantic about it. I remember, you know, because I have an undergraduate degree in political science, so I took all those courses, political theory and all that stuff. And I remember I was in New York, and this was, I think, in the early 80s, and I saw the movie Red. Do you remember that movie Red with, who was in that? Diane Keaton and what's the guy's name who was in Warren Beatty? And it was about the author who, I think he was an author or a playwright. I think it was an author who went over to the Soviet Union to fight the communist revolution in the early 1900s. I think it was the 1918. I'm trying to refresh my recollection. But I saw that movie. That movie was very romantic and dramatic. Did you see that movie, Carlos?
Yes, I did. I vaguely remember it, but I did see it.
It was called Red, I think.
You're very right about the romanticism that is ascribed to these revolutions, because who doesn't want to believe that the common people are going to be given their rightful status in society, being given freedom and being given freedom and control over the society? Who doesn't want to believe that?
Right.
Everybody does, especially the young idealistic people, right? So all this romanticism serves that purpose. But the reality is very different. The reality is very different. None of the communist systems work. Look what Castro, he was also leading the so-called proletariat and the common people. What happened under Castro? They became enslaved. And, you know, I traveled to Cuba several years ago. Those people are starving over there, you know. Really, that's the reality of things. The people are starving. I remember my wife giving a pair of sandals, $2 sandals, to one of the Cuban hotel kitchen help. And he was so marveled by that, and he was so elated because to them a pair of sandals is heaven. You know, when you go to the stores over there in Cuba, there is hardly any restaurants, hardly any stores. My wife and I went to buy an ice cream, and they gave us the ice cream, but they had no spoons for it. They said, no, you got to bring your own spoons. They didn't produce anything. And that is the truth.
You have to bring your own spoons for the ice cream. That's so funny. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, and you know, I was young, and when I saw that movie Red, it was so. The cinematography was so beautiful, and it was workers of the world unite. Yes, you know, the proletariat. It was just so romantic to think that, we're all going to be brothers and sisters. Well, you know, Sanders is still caught up in that romanticism. He cannot accept that it didn't work. This was during the Russian Revolution when Lenin and Marx were coming in and so on and so forth. The 1917 Russian Revolution, I think it was. Sanders is stuck in a time warp or in an ideological time warp. He's not in reality. And his wife. Oh, but anyway, Carlos, thanks for calling in. Thanks for calling into the Naked Truth Report. So now I'll take a call from, who is that? Suzanne in Huntington. Is that Huntington? Hi, Suzanne. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hey, Kathleen.
Hi.
I actually met you a couple of years ago at one of the sponsors that you had in Anaheim.
Oh, the Anti-Fragility Clinic.
Yes. I was going to say the fragility. Yes.
How are you? I remember you.
Yeah,
I remember you. Yes. Thanks for calling
in.
in.
Interview with you. Thank you.
And I'm happy you're still listening to the show. Suzanne, I'm happy that you're still. Go ahead.
But I know you have a great platform to reach all the black folks. I have black friends that I try to get together with them, and I say, why are you voting Democrat? And then they give me their reasons, and then I say, and then I tell them, about black folks are not getting anything from Democrats. They lie to you. And then they say, well, the TV. I say, don't watch that TV. I tell them the only thing to really be, watching and listening to, I said, number one, listen to the Naked Truth Report on Sunday nights.
Oh, thank you.
And and Newsmax TV and, Fox News. I said, you listen to the rest of it. It's all a bunch of made-up lies. Like today you were saying about how, the Russians are interfering. They want Trump to win. No, they don't.
Right.
They don't want Trump to win. They want Bernie Sanders because he's a communist. And
but they've even backtracked. They've backtracked this afternoon. They've backtracked on that assertion, that accusation. Yeah. So, in other words,
really listening.
In other words, Schiff was lying. The Democrats were lying, and James Harmon actually said this.
His middle name is Liar.
Huh?
Schiff's middle name is Liar.
Right.
It's Adam Liar Schiff.
Right.
And we need to get him out of there. This is what he's starting to make it like. Trump is going to be illegitimate if he wins again. Mm-hmm. He's just planting the seeds. He's throwing them out and seeing who's going to, grab onto one, Mm-hmm. So I got to tell you, all my black friends out there, and you know who you are, and you're listening, because I told you I was going to call Kathleen. Vote Republican. No more of this Democrat stuff.
Very good.
They're all lies.
Well, and the other good thing about not voting for Trump is that he's deporting. This is the most important issue for me: deporting illegal aliens. That's the most important issue because illegal aliens have 80 to 90% of the construction jobs in Los Angeles. So here in Los Angeles, that's important. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I told you before that I had gotten a license for insurance to become an insurance agent. I spent 2 years trying to get work as an insurance agent, and I was turned down mostly because I did not speak fluent Spanish.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and the other part was, we don't have time to train. But I went through so many interviews, and the very last they'd say, how's your Spanish? I'd say, I don't speak fluent Spanish. I know a little bit, but not fluent. And they said, well, here's the thing. We cannot hire you because what if someone comes in and you can't speak to them and we lose a potential client? And that's just not acceptable. And then when I walked out, I said, we don't live in Mexico. Have a nice day.
Right.
I've kind of given up on that, Kathleen.
Right.
So, yeah, and I just wanted to tell you, I listen every Sunday to you, and I tell everybody listen, and you're just amazing as always.
Oh, I appreciate that very much, Susan. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah. And then, I wanted to ask you one more thing.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the gentleman's name who wrote the book? He was a few weeks back on your show. He wrote the book. He was in prison.
Oh, yes. Let's see. The name of the book is Shot Caller. And let me look.
Shot Caller.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it's on my page.
Because I've been telling people about that, because that was an amazing show.
Thank you. His name is, let me look. Hold on one second. Oh, it's Ortiz. Is his Ortiz or Lopez? Oh, I can't get on my Facebook page, but go to my YouTube channel. Oh, I think it's Dave. No, it's David Ortiz is the baseball player, but why can't I remember it? The Shot Caller. Go to my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And it's there. Okay.
Okay.
The interview is there. Also, I want to let folks know to subscribe. Are you subscribed to my YouTube channel, Susan?
I have not. I'm sorry, I have not.
Yeah, subscribe. You can see all my old archive shows there. Please subscribe. I'd like to get, my goal is to get on the national stage because I want to talk about these issues that aren't addressed on the national stage. Because we can shut it down immediately if we talk about the fact that Democrats have lied to Black Americans for 6 decades. Am I the only person that says that? Am I the only person that says that free sex feminism has destroyed Black families, have destroyed all families? Am I the only person
telling people? I listen to you, and then I tell people that the same thing you're telling them, and I tell my Black friends, and I said, you know what? I have a Black roommates, and I'm telling you, when I come in and I see them watching TV, I said, no, that's a bad channel. You got to watch, Fox. And the thing is, they're so bombarded with this crazy media, that is doing nothing but lying, because they believe it. And I tell them, you cannot believe it. I said, there's always 2 sides to every story. You listen to that, and then go listen to my side and see what you come up with. Because if something isn't working, then you've got to try something else.
Right. Well, thanks for calling in, Suzanne. I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening and recommending the show. Go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, and you'll see that interview with the Shot Caller. Thank you. So I really appreciate you guys calling in and being avid listeners to the Naked Truth Report. It's important. And it's important that my show is supported so that I can I'm going to get on the national stage and tell the truth because no one else does. Congresswoman Diane Watson seemed to be shocked. She was definitely angry with the things I was saying to her. It was as if she had never heard it before. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a congresswoman believing that illegal aliens predominantly what they do is pick our agriculture, that they're not working in other segments of the society, other segments of other sectors of employment? A congresswoman actually believes they only do agriculture. That's the lie that the Democrats told the American people for decades. Anyway, there's the music. I'll see you next week. Next week, we're going to probably discuss Super Tuesday. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.